Let's talk about mitochondrial DNA because that is the test that they used on the hair that was found on the pliers from the boat. So just to refresh your memory, when the police served a search warrant on Scott's warehouse, they went in there on the 27th of December and they found a pair of needle nose pliers in the boat that looked like it had like a hair wrapped around the end of it. They immediately took it into evidence, and I think their immediate assumption, probably rightfully so, was that it was a hair belonging to Lacey. Now, this was a really big break at the time, if you want my opinion, because up until now, everything had been circumstantial evidence. They couldn't find any, direct evidence that Scott had harmed his wife. And so finding her hair in the boat was a really big deal. Remember, they presented the case that this was a secret boat and that Lacey knew nothing about the boat or Scott's desire to own a boat. Now, a quick counterpoint that I mentioned in one of my previous videos, but just to clarify a little bit more, Mark Garagos, the defense attorney, had lead detective Brocchini up on the stand. He brought up the issue of the secret boat and did Lacey really know about the boat? And he was able to get Brocchini to say under oath that there were a couple of things that he'd found out about during the investigation that should have been entered into the evidence, and it wasn't. One of them was that there was a double date between Scott and Lacey and another couple. This was about 3 weeks before Thanksgiving. So we're talking right around like November 7th when they were out to dinner and the subject of boats came up and they were talking about boats and both men desired to own a boat and they had talked about splitting the cost and sharing a speedboat between the two families. There was also a woman named Peggy O'Donnell who owned a warehouse right near where Scott's was. And she told Brocchini in a statement that she saw Lacey. She actually spoke with Lacey a day or two before her disappearance. Scott had brought her by the warehouse. And Peggy said she spoke with Lacey because Lacey came over to her warehouse and asked her if she could use the bathroom. Apparently, Scott's warehouse, these are not very big warehouses, and to have the boat take up most of it, the fertilizer was stacked up against like the different walls. And it was blocking the bathroom door in Scott's warehouse. So she went over to another warehouse to ask if she could use their bathroom. Brocchini said he chose to excise her statement from his report before he submitted it and did not submit it into evidence like he should have. He was also aware of the dinner 3 weeks before Thanksgiving where the conversation of buying a boat had come up in front of Lacey. Garagos also showed Brocchini photos from inside the warehouse, and they were able to confirm that just the layout of the warehouse and where the boat was in relation to the bathroom door, you couldn't be at one without seeing the other. They were both so close that if you went toward the bathroom, you would definitely have to walk past or near the boat. So if she saw the bathroom, she certainly saw the boat. There are multiple photos of the boat that were taken during this search. This is People's Exhibit 70Q. And like I had mentioned yesterday, when Scott bought the boat, he bought some of the accessories that come along with it. So it was the boat and the trailer. Here is one of those seat cushions. So that blue thing up in the corner, that's a fold up little seat, like a stadium chair kind of, right? It folds up. This is the one that sits in the back right corner of the boat. And there's another one that sits up in the front left. So one person would be back there working the motor and the other person for balance would be in the opposite front corner of the boat. The spare, I'm guessing this is a spare tire for the trailer. I would think you would take this out before you put the boat in the water because it feels to me like it takes up extra space. It's probably just tossed in there. So to make sure that Scott actually got a spare tire for the trailer. It came with 2 life jackets. So those are in there. And then these are a couple fishing poles that were in the boat when the police came to photograph the boat. And then over on this side, you can see down here, you can see the handles of a pair of pliers. They're yellow down there in the corner, you see. And what it is there's kind of a lip underneath that bench. You can see how the fishing pole goes underneath. There's a pass-through underneath these benches. They don't sit on the bottom of the boat. There's a pass-through for water to go underneath or things like oars and fishing poles to go underneath. And the pliers are sort of wedged underneath there. I don't think they're trying to be hidden because to hide them, you just kick them all the way under the bench. I just think that they were there and probably gravity sort of pulled them toward the bench. Here is a close-up photo of these needle nose pliers, and the hair is, you got to zoom in, but the hair is like barely visible, but it's wrapped around the end. Now, although there was only one hair found in the boat on the pliers, the crime lab was able to compare that hair to some hairs taken from Lacey's hairbrush. They confiscated her hairbrush during the search of the home, and they compared the hairs and felt reasonably certain that it was a pretty good match, and then they ordered the DNA testing on the strand of hair that was found on the pliers. So let's talk about science for a minute. So two types of DNA. There is nuclear DNA and there's mitochondrial DNA. And unfortunately, sometimes when the sample size is so small, like that of a hair shaft, you have to test for mitochondrial DNA because it's not enough of a surface space to use the test for nuclear DNA. And bear with me because I'm reading from notes, so I don't want to get this wrong. I've had to do a lot of research on this. So mitochondrial DNA is a tiny ring-shaped molecule of DNA that's much smaller than the more familiar nuclear DNA. Now, nuclear DNA reveals specific genetic makeup, meaning you can prove identity, like the identity of an actual person based on the genetic fingerprint that you get through nuclear DNA. Mitochondrial DNA cannot specifically identify an individual. But what it can do, if it is matched with a similar sample from a mother or a sibling, it can show a statistical likelihood of identification, and it can rule out others. So essentially what it can do is it can say, well, it might be one of this group of people. We definitely know it's not this group of people. So I think it's more of a cancel out than it is to really identify. Now, Garagos filed a motion to have the DNA evidence excluded from the court case because mitochondrial DNA has rarely been used as evidence in California court cases because it can't provide a definitive match. It doesn't give it the certainty or the gravitas that you would want to support that circumstantial evidence. The judge ruled that prosecutors could tell the jury that chances are the mitochondrial DNA from that specific strand of hair could be found in 1 out of every 112 white people. They can't say that it's Lacey's, but they could say it's not 111 other people. And so really, again, you rule out people more than you rule them in with mitochondrial DNA. So this is where the circumstantial evidence comes back into play. And like, where was Scott and who was he with in the days leading up to Lacey's disappearance? Could it be anybody else's hair? Now, I quickly want to say a couple more clarifications, and I think I'm probably gonna have to make another video about the boat because there's so much to talk about the boat. But the guy who sold him the boat said that he sold him, the boat came with a fish finder, 2 rod holders, 2 seat cushions, 2 life jackets, a trolling motor, 1 oar, the battery, an outboard motor that was 15 horsepower, a fuel tank, and a canvas cover. Now, the motor weighs about 75 pounds. We've been questioning the lures and the tackle box. A lot of people came in the comments and they're like, he never opened the tackle box. The lures were still in packaging. Why would he buy brand new fishing gear and never use it? Well, this picture shows, one of the seats is right here. Here's the oar. And here's the tackle box. Now, the guy who sold him the boat said he didn't sell him. It didn't come with the tackle box. So this must have been Scott's very old tackle box. And this is the inside. So I know that he went to Big Five and he bought some lures and he bought some other stuff that he never ever opened. But I guess my question would be, did he need to? Because there were other lures and stuff that he could have used. I don't think he ever fished, right? I don't think he did. He wasn't out there long enough. He had a tackle box with a lot of gear in it. So I do believe that this kind of does debunk the why didn't he open the lures question.